Now let's kind of get into more your story, more about how CELLER8, NewMed, and everything else kind of came to be. We're going to go all Stephen Bartlett on you and kind of go back to your childhood. Do you think maybe your upbringing or anything like that maybe helped lead you towards CELLER8 and NewMed today in any way?
Well, I mean, I can't complain about my upbringing. I have, I've grown up in a broken family, but I've never actually known my parents to be together because they separated just shortly after I was born. But actually, I think I see that personally as quite a good aspect, because they lived very different lives, close to each other. And I saw both my parents growing up, predominantly with my mum, and she lived in the city. And then I had my dad every other weekend, and he lived in a very rural setting, which is where our new offices is, sort of thing, in a nice idyllic kind of place, but next to a farm as well. So I had a really good insight into farms in terms of like raw meat, not raw meat, where the meat comes from. So I think these days, my children, a lot of other children, I try and educate them on this thing, but really people just don't understand where meat comes from these days. They just think it comes from the supermarket. So that education side of things was really important for me growing up. I actually would hunt animals when I was young with my dad. We would never ever hunt for sport, but always to eat. So if we'd shoot a rabbit or something, it would always be gutted and eaten, like very primitive type, upbringing, which was cool. I think it's really learned me a lot. It's really taught me a lot. So that was ironic, wasn't it? Really learned me a lot. So I think having that way of growing up and being outside all the time as well, like, now I talk about biohacking, I talk about taking my shoes off and going outside and spending a lot of time outside. That's what my life was growing up a lot of the time. When we come out of our house, we had this big barn, and you could see the barn from my dad's place, and it was full of hay bales. We'd go in there, we'd be jumping off the hay bales and living a real outside life. There'd be rats in the hay and all sorts of things, but we didn't care. We'd build tree houses, and so something that other people take the piss out of me for is being a bit of a prepper, and I think a lot of biohackers are actually when I talk to people. And if you don't know what a prepper is, it's kind of planning for the end of the world. It's like if shit hits the fan, what would you do? I've got freeze-dried food under my stairs. I've got shotgun license, things like that, not in case I'd ever have to use that, but it's more for if we had to hunt or anything like that. It's just, we're very comfortable these days. We live in a world that is just evolved and changed into this very, you can sit on your sofa, watch Love Island, and your food gets brought to you. It's like people don't understand how easy we have it now. So I think my upbringing has been pretty good. It's also taught me the other side, where my mum is, we lived in the city, but she had all three of us kids to look after the majority of the time. So everything we ate with her was very super fast food. It was always chicken nuggets, chips, that sort of thing. And I don't blame her for bringing us up on a bad diet, because she was always busy, but it just opened my eyes to a bad diet versus a good diet. When we went around my dad's, we'd always have Sunday roast. It would always be lots of veg, lots of meat, and that sort of thing. So something I'm now giving to the younger generation, my younger generation, of a nice balanced diet, good amount of meat, veg, and and trying not to, where we can, use convenient food. And that's really influenced my views and everything now on how to live healthy, and eating right and connecting to nature the way we should do.
Yeah, no, I feel like I can relate a little bit with that as well, with the countryside living and the city living. When I was younger, I only up until about 19, all I could see from my window was fields. I had a barn in the garden, we had tractor sheds next door, we had two neighbours on the street. There wasn't really was very rural. There'd be horses in the backfield. You'd see all kinds of birds and everything like that. It just very different life. And then move into more of a city side. And especially when I lived in London, I remember telling people about that. And they were like, I've never even seen a sheep. I've never even seen a cow, let alone see one being killed and understand that side of life as such. But you mentioned towards the end about how seeing that and having the two different types of diets has always kind of influenced your health. Would you say health's always been kind of something in your mind, or is it something that you've kind of now developed more later on as you've kind of got older?
Health's always been in my mind, but I don't think I understood health the way I do now. Like, for example, I would always be part, as soon as I was 16, I was a member of a gym. I just want to be a gym. But the reason I was at the gym was to look good. And I would go there and do chest and arms. And the next day I'd do chest and arms. And then I'd do chest and arms. So I was working out, but it was more for aesthetic reasons. And then I knew, from the basic primitive internet back then, that protein was good and veg was good. So I would eat, battered chicken and freezed vegetables and that sort of thing, and that would be my stable diet, which is probably better than a lot of other people's diet back then. But not, it really redeveloped like later on in life, where I can now actually understand that battered chicken is probably not the best type of protein to get.
No.
And peas, freezered peas for every meal is also not, varying your vegetables and having a varied diet. I see these gym bros these days eating chicken and rice. And again, I think it's not until you kind of learn through the processes of actually a varied diet. And so health's always been in my mind, but also when you're young, which we'll talk about when it came to my journey, is that you kind of think you're invincible as well at that age. You can burn the candle at all five ends, and you think you get away with it for a certain period of time until you don't. So yeah, it's always been there. Like, coming back to the question, but it's really within the last 10 years, like, completely evolved with how I look at health and how, what I do these days, what I have for breakfast, what I eat. It's evolved.
No, definitely. I know you always kind of say about your shakes in the morning. Before we started this, we tested the microphones by telling me what you had for breakfast, and you had berries and like a creatine thing and like all different kinds of healthy things. I had a bagel with sausages and egg in that. It's probably not as healthy as yours.
You're still young, Josh. You're still in that era of getting away with everything, but it will catch up with you.
Yeah, hopefully not too soon. But one thing as well, frozen peas are great for those, cooling down cameras, which we learned. Hopefully we don't need that today. But talking about health, you said in your 10-year span, in the last 10 years, you kind of really maybe thought about your health differently, or just thought about health as a whole differently. Would you say maybe when you were younger that you expected this to kind of be the career you would end up going into?
No, because I wanted to be in the police. I think I've said that to you before. Like, when you ask a 5-year-old what do they want to do when they're older, I always said the police. And I actually wanted to see it through. When I left school, I went to university and I did criminology and psychology. So I did 3 years of that, and got a degree at the end of it. And I went in to get a job with the UK Metropolitan Police. My aspiration of just police kind of went up to armed response. So, I went to get a university degree so that I could get into the armed response quicker. My eyes are 20/20. They still are. They always have been. So, in the armed response, you have to have a good eyesight. So I was warmed up to it. I was educated. I was ready to go. And I won't go too deep into this in this podcast, but when I went into the application process, they said to me, "You're white, British, and male, and you got an education." So, and I'm thinking, that's good news. Mm-hmm. And he said, no, that's really bad news. That means you're probably not going to get a job anytime in the next decade, because we've got other targets to hit. We've got ethnicity targets to hit. We've got even the fact that you're educated actually means that you're going to go on a higher salary. So we might not, so all the things that I'd done to give me a springboard to get into the police and to get into the armed response, actually, according to this person in the office where I went to sign up, was completely against me. So, and it did really knock me, and it really pissed me off at the time. But I filled out an application anyway, and I was working at a phone shop. I was working at sports shops. I was doing all sorts of things then. I was always working from the age of 16. And so my dad, he at the time was running a medical manufacturing business, and he said to me, why don't you come and work for me for a few years? He said to me, my brother and my sister, he won't ever employ us unless we get a university degree. So I'll tick that box. And I said, you know what? I never wanted an office job. I always said, that was I kind of saw my dad in his office every day, and I thought it's cool, but I don't want to be sat down. I want to be on my feet, and I want to be an active role. The armed response was cool. It just seemed really cool. So I said, I'll do it as a stopgap. I'll leave my phone shop job, which I loved in retail. And I said to him, I'll come and work for the family business in medical manufacturing. And that was the start of the end.
So you'd say probably your younger self, or last question on it, would probably be quite surprised by where you are now, or what you're doing now.
Yeah, exactly. Because, I probably thought I'd be in the police by now, making my way up through the ranks. But I wouldn't change anything, for where we are today, what we're doing, which we'll get into. It's a dream come true, really. I'm a office job, which is not what I wanted, but I wouldn't say we actually spend a lot of time too much in the office. We're doing a lot of travel, we're doing a lot of visiting, and eventually going to be opening a health hub, which we'll talk about.